Hey guys, my name is Emily McDonald. For this assignment, I have chosen Hugh Herr's TED Talk, which is titled The New Bionics That Let Us Run, Climb, and Dance. I will go into detail and summarize his message behind his TED Talk. I'd like to start this presentation by giving insight to who Hugh Herr really is. I'll be going over his current job profession, his initial drive to create prosthetics, and his accomplishments. Currently, he is a professor in MIT's program in Media Arts and Sciences and in the Harvard-MIT Division of Health and Sciences and Technology. What initially sparked his drive for building newer and better prosthetics was his rock climbing accident in 1982. Herr and his accompanying friend were caught in a blizzard and left stranded for 3 days and received both bad frostbite and ultimately 2 amputated legs. Herr has helped over 40 patients and has written more than 60 peer-reviewed papers in rehabilitation science. He is the creator of computer-controlled knee, the robotic ankle foot, which Time magazine named him top 10 inventors in 2007. He was also later presented the 13th Annual Heinz Award for Technology and has continued his research to improve prosthetic technology for everyone. Moving on, I asked you to think about it. Have you ever taken your biological frame for granted? Well, many of us do, including me, but after watching Herr's TED Talk, I got his perspective of being disabled. He made the comment of how he never blamed frostbite for taking his legs. Instead, he blamed the lack of technological advancement. This sparked his drive to go out and improve all forms of prosthetics. He started out by focusing on himself and getting back out there to go rock climbing. He created a narrow edge foot and a spiked foot. The narrow edge foot allows him to climb steep rocks and dig into small places that help give him a boost while going up the mountain. The spiked vertical foot allows him to climb icy, steep mountains at a faster rate. Both these new feet advancements leave him with no leg fatigue by the end of his rock climbing journey. He told his audience, by the end of his rock climbing journey, he always feels stronger and better now with his new prosthetics. Continuing on, I will talk about the interface names and abilities in the partnership with Professor Neri Oxman. Hugh Herr explained to his audience that there are 3 different types of interfaces that mechanically and technologically make up his prosthetic legs that he was wearing during his TED Talk. The first interface is mechanical. Mechanical interface is how limbs are attached to the human body. The second is dynamic. A dynamic interface is how they move like flesh and bone, like any normal leg. The third interface is electrical. Electrical interface is how they communicate with the nervous system and the spinal cord to operate and move and behave like normal legs. Mechanical interface led into the partnership with Professor Neri Oxman. Hugh Herr and Professor Neri Oxman created a 3D printout of virtual clothing. Herr explained the fact that shoes, which have been around for years, still give us humans blisters, and asked the question, why is that? This led to him and Oxman's discovery of creating new and comfier clothing with their 3D model. They feel that clothing should be stiff in places that should be stiff and soft where clothing should be soft, which will ultimately create the best form of clothing for any human being. Now, I would like to go in more in depth with each interface. The first interface is mechanical, which deals with the attachment with the body and the prosthetic. I will talk about the technology used and the evidence found. While Hugh Herr was experimenting and creating his now best of yet prosthetics to come, he used both an MRI machine and a 14 actuator circle, which were both discussed in his TED Talk. The MRI machine took pictures of the inside of his body, which he then used to mirror his tissues and cartilages in his prosthetic leg and knee. The MRI machine helped Herr's new prosthetic leg fit like a glove. or like any other leg. Then he placed his leg in a 14 actuator circle which measures the shape of his limb. The 14 actuator circle pushed on Hugh's tissues and measured his tissue compliance, which ultimately created synthetic skin for his new prosthetic leg. He then came to the conclusion that optimally would equal where the body is stiff, the synthetic skin should be soft, and where the body is soft, his synthetic skin should be stiffed, which this all would be the mirroring of his actual tissue compliances. Both the MRI and the 14 actuated circle became both great data-driven quantitative frameworks which have helped Hugh create 2 great prosthetic legs for himself. The second form of interface I will be talking about is dynamic interface. Dynamic interface deals with the process of forming the prosthetic limb to feel and act like flesh and bone. With this form of interface, I will go into detail about biomes and the bionic propulsion. Herr explained that during this interface, he studied how a normal person walks, jogs, and stands. He paired that normal human to equipment that recorded all their skeletal movements. He then noticed how the spinal cord controls all the motions of the human body. He talked about the human central nervous system and how the brain and spinal cord form it. He then explained how the human can now move their prosthetic leg with their brain and make the leg feel like flesh and bone or any other leg. Hugh then talked about biomes advantage, which deals with the ankle and foot area of the prosthetic. He has created an ankle restoration that will help his patients increase their walking distance and speed, improve stability, and make walking up ramps easier. Lastly, with this interface, he discussed how his advancement with bionic propulsions and how they can help assist with humans. Bionic propulsions assist with lifting a person into walking position by stiffening the ankle area, which then sends shock waves and makes the limb or leg work like a normal one. Finally, the last form of interface is electrical. This form of interface has similar actions like of the second interface, which was dynamic. This form of interface is the part that focuses on communication and movement. I will discuss electrodes and motor channels as well. Electrodes create algorithms that help create signals from the brain to the prosthetic to form desired movements. Like dynamic interface, this form of interface also deals with the brain because it sends signals to the phantom limb, which is ultimately controlling the prosthetic. This then relates to Hugh Herr's talking about motor channels. Motor channels communicate with the human cells to transform and figure out how the human wants to move. Hugh Herr explained this form of interface not only allows the prosthetic to look like flesh and bone, but feel like flesh and bone. Before concluding this presentation, I will ask 3 distinct questions. Question 1. How long will it take for Hugh Herr's prosthetic limbs to become financially affordable for patients that use Medicaid and Medicare for their health care insurance? Question 2. What would happen if one of these limbs malfunctions and hurts one of Hugh Herr's patients? Question 3. What will be the next technological advancement that Hugh Herr will create with his prosthetic journey? With this all being said, I hope you follow up by watching Hugh Herr's TED Talk and have become more interested in the technological advancements with disabilities. Keep in mind to not take too much for granted and to stay optimistic with whatever challenges life throws at you. If anything, this presentation and Hugh Herr's TED Talk should spread awareness to people who might not know much about prosthetics and to people who might need a prosthetic. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Have a great day.